Hi everyone from the MSR conference. My name is Daniel Alencar da Costa, and I'm an assistant professor in the University of Otago, New Zealand. So this is a new experience for me, the first conference I'm recording my presentation. So I brought here my rubber duck, and I'm gonna place my rubber duck on top of the camera so that the experience is not as awkward as I think. At least I'll feel I'm explaining to someone. Let's see if it works. So let me bring in the slides. So our work is about the relationship between software issues and user churn. And this work has been performed with my colleagues from Queen's University. Actually, when this work was being carried, I was part of Queen's University. I was doing my postdoc there. So I really miss Queen's University. Professor Jenny Zhu, your lab is awesome. Just wanted to say that if you are watching the presentation. And Safwat and Omar, you guys are also awesome. And I miss everyone, okay? So let's move to the topic. All right, so we know that users, they discuss their opinions online. So we have been, in the MSR community, we have been doing many research that has studied those user reviews. And in their reviews, the users, they express their feelings related to an app, right? So they give a certain rate, they provide compliments, or they rant about what they hate about the app. And this can be useful because it can be used as a way to gauge whether certain functionality should be implemented or not, or which kind of bugs should be fixed in order to raise that rating that we really want, right? We have also work not only related to software, but also work that analyze reviews in Amazon products. So for example, predicting the reviews of a given product based on certain characteristics, using deep learning from that. So we already know, and the community has already been investigating users' opinions about apps. So what is new about this work? The new thing about this work is because although we have investigated and users' opinions about an app in the app reviews and things like that, we don't really analyze or have investigated whether the fact that a user is criticizing an app or the fact that a user is praising an app, if this is enough to keep the user in the app or to change the app. For example, let's say here in the picture we have Firefox and Chrome. Let's say that a user is not very satisfied with Firefox's speed, okay? But let's say that this is not enough for the user to change his mind or her mind and change to Chrome. However, perhaps that very complaint is making the user to think about changing to another app. So this is important because the success of software apps is basically based on the usage of the users, right? And here, user churn. We are investigating user churn, which is basically a term that was coined in other areas, such as telecommunication service, and basically talks about those users who are potentially shifting to other services. So those workings in other areas, they work on predicting which users might actually change from my service to the competition. So which it's going to mean, it's going to mean that I'm going to lose revenue, I'm going to lose certain users. So can I target these users in a customized way or in a tailored way to keep these users in my service? So same idea here, right? However, in MSR community and software, empirical software engineering in general, we need data to do these certain types of investigations, right? And this is when the alternative.net comes in handy, because differently from platforms such as Google Play or Apple Store, where users go and provide their reviews, here in the alternative tool, this platform is tailored in a way that it informs users about software alternatives. So basically, I discovered this platform when I was writing a paper, research paper, as we all do here in the community. And then I realized that I wanted a PDF reader that I could actually compile my LaTeX code from the command line, and then it could update automatically in the PDF reader because I didn't want to use any IDE. So then I thought, okay, is there a reader alternative to the one that I'm using that actually allows me to run a command on the command line and updates the PDF on the reader without hanging the process because, oh, your file is open. All right, so I actually found alternative.net, and I found a PDF reader that gave the very exact feature that I wanted. So then this was actually when I was still working in Jenny's lab, Professor Ying's lab. And then we started thinking, actually, this could be a very interesting work because we can analyze how users are perceiving certain apps and whether these things they find annoying or these bugs, if it's enough to make them to consider to change from an app to another. So this is going to be clear now that I'm going to show some examples. So here is an example of in perspective comments between Chrome and Firefox, okay? So you can note here that, for example, the user is mentioning Chrome, it doesn't have the same level of privacy and personalization, right? Also, there's another comment mentioning the user Chrome does not have as many language and spell checking support as Firefox does. So note that these comments, they are a bit different from those platforms that we have been talking about because they actually provide an in-perspective analysis. I'm not only talking about an app, but I'm also talking about this app related to the competition, right? So this is good to perform some analysis. The very good, important thing also in this data set from alternative tools is because we have sometimes the comments from users when they are considering a given software as an alternative. And in fact, that's how I found the PDF reader that I wanted. Basically, I saw these comments or the features of the competition, and then I chose another PDF reader. So here we have a comment that this user thinks or she, I don't know, he thinks that Google Chrome is an alternative to Firefox. Why? Because Jupyter Lab in Firefox is slower compared to Chrome, which according to him or her, it works perfect in Chrome, right? So this is the tricky part because now we call this as potential user churn because although these users, they are considering those apps to be an alternative, we don't actually know whether they shift, if they change actually from an app to another. However, we have an indication of an intention to churn, right? This is already worrying, for example, if I have a product, because if my users are thinking that certain app can be an alternative to mine because of certain characteristics, I can be sure that they are considering changing, which is already enough for me to consider to address those issues, right? So this is why this data is important. In fact, we found some issue reports that are also related to those issues they are mentioning when they are considering to choose from a service to another. So then we thought, okay, why not relating those potential user churn to issue reports characteristics and check whether the relationship between them. Can we actually understand which issue reports are more tightly related to churn and which issue reports are not as tightly related to churn, right? So we performed this empirical study and we collect all this information, these 3.5K reviews, almost 11,000 comments, and 12.5K recommendations for alternatives from alternative 2. And we have focused our work on the domains of browsers, IDE, and web service domain. All right, but Daniel, why didn't you guys analyze everything, every domain on alternative.net? I wish I could have done that. I wish we could have done that. I'm pretty sure Omar or Safwat or Jenny, they also would like to have done that. But problem is, we would also need data. We would need issue reports information to analyze the relationship between issue reports and user churn. So because of that, then we thought, okay, why not focusing on domains that have been thoroughly studied in the area of software engineering and that we know they have rich issue reports data, right? So then we focused on the browser's IDE and web servers. Our first research question was actually to understand what are the most significant concerns of the users in these domains, okay? So we started by analyzing the in-perspective comments, right? With the comments that I have shown, comparing products. We performed LDA on that, doing all the steps that are necessary to do, lemmatization, steaming, things like that. Then we got our topics, and then we analyzed a statistics sample of our data in order to come up with insights. So what we have observed in this question is that, although of course there were specific concerns to specific domains, for example, in terms of IDEs, testing tooling was a very specific concern that users always complained about. So if you are developing an IDE, testing tooling is very important for you, according to the data of alternative.net, okay? But issues related to memory issues and versions and updates were a commonplace. So for example, Eclipse is really lagging after the last update. Or Firefox Quantum is better now than Chrome compared to previous versions of Firefox. So what does this imply? It implies that although I may like one product, it's interesting to know how my opinion may actually change for another product given a version or an update. So this is really critical. And then this research question was actually a preliminary research question to hint that in fact those concerns, they might be related to issue reports. So we moved to the research question one. So we actually, can we find a correlation between potential users and issue reports? So regarding the methodology, if you have questions about the methodology, you can ask me later in the Q&A session, but I'm gonna focus on the message of the paper. So basically, we treated issue reports and potential churn, the data from alternative to and from issue reports as events on a timeline. And then we treated them as time series. So to check the correlation between them, whether, for example, a peak in issue reports being reported and a peak in user churn, we analyzed them through cross-correlation, which is a global measure of correlation between time series. We observed there is a clear correlation. And then we also did the dynamic time warping, which is good because the dynamic time warping, it can compare two similar time series regardless of the offsets between these time series. We also perform manual analysis to get some insights on whether these correlation also were expressed in the data. And then we collected our results. So in fact, we observe a strong association between the peaks in issue reports and peak in potential churn. So for example, we have an issue report description talking about the problem that Firefox is caching so many data on the SSD. And also there was a comment, a potential switch from Firefox to Chrome, given the fact that that version of Firefox actually was damaging the SSD. So there is a clear correlation, and this can be used in the issue fixing process to somehow prioritize the issue reports that should be fixed, okay? So then, as another step, as a following step, we thought that, okay, can we actually predict somehow this rate of user churn? So then we got the issue report variables. We collected variables related to the issue report. We built some models. So in fact, we built 3 models: random forest, XGBoost, neural network. And we performed our ordered validation. So instead of using tenfold cross validation, we used the ordered validation because issue reports, they happen in a timely manner. They have a date attached to them. All right. And then we analyzed our models in terms of AUC. We obtained AUC, which is good, of 8.3. And next, we analyzed them, given that the XGBoost was the most powerful model we came up. We basically did the same process, but doing the feature extraction to check which features were having more impact on the AUC to get a sign of the importance of the variables, all right? One thing that we have observed is that our variable, the time that an issue takes to be fixed, even if this issue is not very important, it might cause a churn. So the time that this issue took to be fixed, to be addressed, was one of the most important features that had an impact in AUC. So for example, we observed that in an issue report, which sessions are not clear in the private window of Firefox, they were actually being mentioned on the intention to change in alternative.net. Chrome incognito functionality is more stable than Firefox. Firefox doesn't reset sessions, okay? So the presentation was about it. Thank you very much for following me up to this point. And I'm looking forward to your questions. All right, here's just a summary of our observations. I hope you have enjoyed and see you soon.